Well, let's first understand the scale of percentages, right? So first, remember we said 100% is just going to equal to the total amount, right? Because what is a percent? What does percent mean?
Like a part of a number.
So let's say right up percent. So we know per is just per, right? What does cent mean?
Like 100.
Exactly. Great. So 100% means you have 100 per 100. So what's that equal to?
1.
Exactly, right? So that's why 100% is just a number, right? If you get 100% of the questions correct on an exam, you got all the questions right. So then if the total number of questions is 100, times 1 is just going to equal 100. Does that make sense? That's also why, let's say you got 20% correct, right? 20%, 20 over 100. What's 20 over 100
Um,
as a decimal?
1. Wait, 2 or 0.2?
0.2. Great. So then what's 0.2 times, like, let's say 100?
20? Wait, no.
Exactly right,
Hmm.
20. So when you want to think about a percentage, you want to think about it like a fraction per 100. But if I were to told you what is 200% of 2, what would it be?
4? Wait.
Exactly, right?
Oh,
Mm-hmm. And what would this 200% be as a fraction?
um, 2. Wait. Uh, I'm not sure.
It's okay. So we know we have 200%, right? What does percent mean?
Over 100.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So then as a fraction, it would be 200 over 100. And what happens when you're dividing two numbers with equal amount of zeros?
they cancel each other
They
out.
cancel each other out, so it'd be 2 over 1, which is just equal to 2. And then we're just multiplying that by 2, which is going to equal to 4. Okay, now what happens if I have 300% times 2? What would that be?
Mm, 6.
Mm-hmm.
Wait.
Don't doubt yourself. You know it. 300 over 100. The zeros cancel out, so it's going to be 3 times 2, which is equal to 6. And feel free to, if you have like a piece of paper, write this down too. So what if I have 50%? What would that be?
1.
So first, let's break into a fraction. 50 over what?
100. Or,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And then what's that going to be?
Uh, 2.
50 over 100?
Mm,
Let's think.
point
You
5.
get 5. Wait, 5?
Point 5.
0.5, right? But what's that as a fraction? Let's keep things as fractions. Just
One
because it
half.
like, mm-hmm. 1/2, right? So what's 1/2 times 2?
1.
1, right? So if you have the total number is 2, if you get 50%, you got 1. All right? What about 25%?
Mm. Is it just like 2 divided by 4?
Exactly. Exactly.
So one
But
half.
and what's 25% as a fraction?
25 over 100.
Mm-hmm. And what's that? What's it called? What is that condense or simplify
0.25.
as a fraction?
Oh, 1/4.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm saying keep it as a fraction is, did you learn how to cross multiply in Algebra 1?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So when you cross multiply, you can simplify in this sort of form, which is something you need to be good at for these sorts of exams, because when you're gonna have a long extended equation, right? So having things as fractions make it easier to break things down to get the answer quicker. Because then we can say, all right, what's 4 broken down divided by 2? What's 4 divided by 2?
2.
2, and what's 2 divided by 2?
1.
1, and you're doing 1/2 times 1 is just going to be 1/2. So rather than having 0.25, what am I going to do with 0.25 times 2? 0.50. Then I have to convert that back into 1/2. But you can sort of see how formatting is really important because if you mess up the formatting, you're only going to spend more time. If you not necessarily mess up, if you make the formatting more harder for yourself, you're just going to confuse yourself and increase the chances of you getting a question wrong. So the main goal I want you to think about is that, or the main goal of this entire like plot thing we were just doing is that converting these percentages into fractions. That's really important. So when you hear 25%, I want you to think, all right, that's 1/4. So 25% is 1/4. The other important thing I'm trying to make you realize with this is the scale of percentages. So I remember what you for this question, you said it was 225%, right? You said what percentage of 300 is 75? If you do 225%, that number is going to be greater than 300. That's going to be greater than 600, right? Well, we're looking at the answer it's saying is 75. So the answer could never be such a large number like 225. So that's the answer I want you to cross out immediately when you're looking at these sort of questions. Does that make sense?
To do that, like with the 225, would I do it like 225 over 100? And
Yeah,
then
but the main thing is that I don't want you to even do that because when you look at 225, you're going to be thinking the question is asking what percentage of 300, so let's just put it as an x. X times 300 is equal to 75. Doing 225% would mean you're multiplying 225% times 300, which is going to give you a greater number, like 600. It's going to be around like greater than 600, right? 75 is so much smaller than 600. So when you're looking at the multiple, because it's a multiple choice exam, right? So when you see that, you're going to be like, no way it can be 225. Cross that out immediately. Now, on the other hand, these questions, these are all fractions of 300, which are more plausible than 225. So these are the questions you should actually be trying to like consider as your answer. While 225, I don't want you to even think about. Does that make sense? Because at the end of the day,
mm,
it's about time, right? Time is so important on these exams. You could know everything, but if you run out of time, it doesn't mean anything. Not to like scare you or anything, but um, that's the mindset to have. Um, and you're only a sophomore now, going up to a junior, so you have so much time. But if you think about these things early on, your progress is going to be exponential versus if you sort of have the mindset that like, all right, I just need to get it correct, then sure your score is going to go up, but it's not going to go up to what it could be if you have the mindset that this is just a game, right? I need to game the system. All right. So that's the first thing those are the two things we wanted to cover. Another important thing I want you to do is this is a word problem actually. So with word problems, it's important to see when it mentions a certain operation, like multiplication, division, addition. So, we're gonna give you like this book, which is like basically goes over all the math on the SAT, and the main thing that one section about it is that they teach you what words to be to look out for. An important one here is of. I remember when I was learning algebra, this was like so interesting to me when I was a kid. It was like of, when you say of something, this is the same thing as when you're multiplying. What percentage? We don't know what percentage it is. So we can assume that as being a variable, right? The same thing you learned in like algebra, right? What
Mm.
percentage? That's going to be your x, right? Of 300. So we know that of is multiplied, so we know it's of 300 is. Now, what do you think is? What sign would it be?
Equal.
Equal. Great job. So now, look at this. I have an equation which I can just solve for x. I don't need to go through each of these options and try to see what it is, right? I don't have to do that. All I have to do is just solve for this equation. And how do we solve for x here?
Divided by it, or 300.
Exactly, divided by 300, right? So it's 75 divided by 300.
Oh, 20 or 0.25.
Exactly. How does that feel?
That makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like you just learned a lot from that just one question, right? You learned about the
Mhm.
scale of percentages. You learned about word problems and, certain what of means and is means in a word expression. You learned converting percentages to fractions. So that's how the SAT works, right? It's a great SAT example question for that first module. It's basically saying that we're gonna combine a bunch of different things you learn through all those years in high school. And we want you to combine them and implement them together. But you won't even have to, when you do so many problems, you won't even have to think about it like you did now for like just now. You would just know immediately that 300x is equal to 75. Put in my calculator, 75 divided by 300. That's the answer. Circle. Let's move on. So when I was saying in the beginning about doing a lot of questions, that's how you do well. But it's also about checking your answers and being vigilant with